business. After all, there's only about 100 of us, mostly farmers, some craftsmen. Joseph, a carpenter. That's why he wears the tip behind his ear. Away up there on the plains of Ezraon, where Barak and Gideon and Saul and the Maccabees battled Israel's enemies. And there's the main road toward Nain and Jezreel. That's the way Mary and Joseph would go. Now her parents spoiled her riding. Why, her father let her ride on the oxen while he plowed. And her mother, why, she let Mary sit in the field all day braiding gardens of wildflowers. Her mother always said, she'll never call me the same. Look, does she know? Mary was always one to dream, a gentle girl. Even I more than once said to my girl, why can't you be more like Mary? I thought she was almost perfect. Little did I know. When she turned 12, the young men started showing off for her at the sheep shearing. Joseph, older than most of them, and much too serious for such going on, found ways to see her. Bringing a taste of his mother fig jam, mending a plow for her father, tossing Mary basket of olives to his own shoulders, but Mary's mother didn't like it. Oh no, she thought Mary was meant for more than bearing children for a young carpenter. But Mary would invite him in to sit down to eat a dish of bakes or to have a sip of wine. She took to making pillows for her father to rest his head after his noonday meal. And nothing would do for feeling but the cypress shaving from Joseph's shop. One night when my daughter was visiting Mary, Joseph's father came to see Mary's father, carried with him the marriage portion, the 50 denarii as required by the Jewish law. They sat on the pillows Mary had, bargaining. But every time Mary's father looked towards the kitchen, he saw Mary with her hands clasped, her eyes beseeching. The arrangement didn't take long. When Joseph's father had gone, Mary hugged her father. He patted her head. He sighed, and he went into the bedroom where my daughter heard Mary's mother crying. Right up there is our synagogue. Everything important always happened there. The next Sabbath, I was right behind Mary and her mother, going into the women's gallery. Below us, Joseph stood between his father and Mary's father. After the men and their French prayer shawl chanted the song, the rabbi unlocked the chest and lifted out the sacred scroll. Then the rabbi announced that Joseph desired the hand of Mary, whose lineage was also from the house of David, and that if anyone had called to question the union, let them speak up now. I looked sideways at Mary. Her eyes was fixed on Joseph, but she clutched her mother's arm. Her mother sighed and laid her hands on Mary's arm. The next day, Mary's father whitewashed their house inside and out. Her mother started baking bread, washing vegetables, checking the wine. As the moon was full, Mary hung branches of dampened leaves on the wall, and she even put blossom on the ceiling. Well, on Wednesday of the week of the full moon, Mary's father threw a pennant from the roof of their house. Her mother hung lanterns around the room, laid linen on the table, and placed 2 chairs at the head. In late afternoon, my girls went over to help Mary dress, and I ran to get a good seat. At sunset, we heard men shouting. Mary's father lit a torch for the bridegroom. And he Joseph didn't even look like himself. He got made. Dressed in white linen. He even slicked his hair back with olive oil. My girls brought Mary to the door. Her white dress flowed from her ankles. Her hair was unbound to show that she was a virgin. Mary and Joseph stared at each other until the girls started to giggle. I glared at them. And they settled. And they seated Mary and Joseph at the head of the table. I was the first up to lay a cloth at their feet. Then after the gifts, the scribe nodded to Joseph. Joseph pulled the purse holding the marriage fee from his girdle. The scribe took it and said, "What token have you brought to mark this covenant?" Joseph unwound his girdle. The rabbi took it and laid it across Mary's uplifted hand. Joseph vowed that he would honor her as her Jewish husband, and that all his property would be hers forever. Not that he had any. Then Joseph took the rabbi a grossman veil of white. His rough hand shook as he placed it on Mary's head. Now her face, her body, was his to shield. Then slowly he removed the veil and handed it to the rabbi to keep for the wedding. The betrothed made them man and wife before the world linked by law, but not by the flesh. The wedding could be held up to a year later. One look at Joseph's face and knew it wouldn't be that long. Well, for the next 3 months, all of us women helped Mary's mother make the bedding, the tablecloths, the towels. Then one day when I went to their door, Mary's father met me and said, "There will be no sewing today." Mary's mother had taken him to the bed. When I asked to speak to Mary, he stepped and said, "She's busy with her mother." I just happened to be looking out the door when Joseph came for his evening walk with Mary. Betrothed couples can see each other alone. It's even legal for them to kiss, but not proper. When Mary's father turned him away, Joseph's face was white. And neither Mary nor her mother set foot outside the house for over a month. And then all of a sudden, they bundled Mary up and packed her off to her cousin Elizabeth up towards Jerusalem. Well, what a mess Mary left behind. The men diving at Joseph because his betrothed had taken herself off. Mary's mother and father never said a word. And the whispering, terrible. That's just terrible. And 3 months later, I was hanging out the wash, and there was Mary, riding in with a group of fishermen from Magdala. And when Mary was slinging off the donkey, I dropped a wet sheet right in the dirt. She was pregnant. More than 7 or 8 months if I'm in a judge. Well, that news spread fast. Joseph came and walked right into the house. A crowd gathered. He returned to muttering to shouts of anger. Then Mary's father stammered out, his face haggard. "Friends, neighbors," he said. The crowd quieted. Our daughter said that this child she bears is a holy child." The crowd stood there stunned. He hurried on. She said the Holy Spirit overshadowed her. And that the seed of Yahweh himself has entered her womb. No one said a word. Then Joseph came out, his face drawn. "Go home, friends," he said. "Go home." Everyone did go home. But they were whispering, "Whose child is it? Whose child is it?" I can't understand Mary's parents. If the child is Joseph, why couldn't they have the wedding right away? Some might have gospel, but no one will know for sure. Or since she did go off to her cousin, Joseph could claim desertion and could have divorced her. But if the child is another man, Mary should be stoned to death. But that Joseph chose to believe her. I'll never know. He kept away from folks. Even for me, Mary's next door neighbor. And now, there goes Joseph, taking her with him to Bethlehem for the census. Those who actually think they are the chosen one of God, I don't believe it for a minute. I'm not one to hear an angel speak, but there's one thing I know about such things. But I know what I know, and to be pregnant, a woman has to lie with a man. And if Joseph and Mary have chosen to be parents of God's own son, all they got so far is scorn and scandal. I don't want to be in their part of that.
13, 14 at the most. It's a good thing she has a husband in her condition. The soldiers can make jokes about her. They have to be counted before they can get through the gates into Bethlehem. My husband, that is that soldier riding that black and white stallion. He's a lieutenant. Commands a platoon of 30 soldiers. It's all his fault I'm here in Bethlehem instead of Jerusalem. I like it there. Our house was in the Terrapin Valley that ran through the city. A small house tucked under the arch. The arch that spans the valley. A passageway across from Herod's palace to the temple. What I really liked about Jerusalem was the upper market. It stands directly in front of the palace. It's wonderful. The Roman arcades along the three sides and an open court for stalls in the center. All kinds of things to look at, even when I can't afford them. Oils, perfumes, silks, and gold bracelets. I love to shop in this place. It's only 6 miles from Jerusalem, but a different world. A few people living in mud houses, a dusty old square at the center of town, not one thing worth buying. And a dirty old inn at the edge of the marketplace. There was 1 or 2 houses like this, one whitewashed boxes. It's not much, but it's the best there is. I'm not even going to ask my husband where he got this house from. Probably threw out a Jewish tax collector. That's all there is, except a few caves and a limestone hill. I wonder where that poor girl is going to sleep tonight. It's strange how I feel I know her. You see, about 5 or 6 days ago, I went with a group of soldiers' wives to a town named Jezreel. They make this special kind of cloth, spun thin, like gossamer. The Jews use it at weddings. Well, I wanted some for a dress. So we all took our maids and we had a Roman rest house to stay in. Well, no sooner had I arrived when my husband sent word with the soldier that a centurion had transferred me to Bethlehem for another Roman officer. I guess that's the lot of a soldier's life, but I don't have to like it. Believe me, I don't like traveling alone in this country either. I sent Dorcas, oh, by the way, Dorcas is my Jewish maid, out to see if we could join a caravan going toward Bethlehem. She was running back all excited. A small group of Jews in from Nazareth and Nain were camped outside of Jezreel. She said they would be starting east across the Esdraelian plains in the morning. So So I hired a little cart, 2 donkeys, and a driver. Not a comfortable way to travel. I didn't want to travel with the Jews, such peculiar people. But I don't have much choice. I certainly didn't intend to talk to them, though I could have if I wanted to. Dorcas had been with me for 7 years, and she and I spoke Aramaic together. I doubt if they wanted me to talk to them either. But they couldn't refuse me. They couldn't refuse to take a Roman soldier's wife. Dorcas was so pleased that we were going to live in Bethlehem. The silly girl prated on about someone named Ruth in a tomb, and Boaz, her husband, whose field still carries his name. The town is really special, though, because according to Dorcas, it's the birthplace of David, Israel's beloved shepherd king. While she was telling me this, Dorcas got all starry-eyed. Bethlehem is the place, she said, where, according to one of our prophets, the Savior of Israel will be born. Talk like that, even from Dorcas, makes me a little nervous. But I couldn't help thinking of what Dorcas said when we joined the Jews that next morning. How was this Jewish girl pregnant? I'm sorry. Here was this Jewish girl pregnant. Dorcas said her name was Mary, almost ready to deliver. But there was no halo around her head. When I first saw her husband, Joseph, he was strapping a tent across his donkey for a saddle, some way for the mother of the Savior to ride. Wouldn't you know, as soon as the Jews saw I was a Roman, they started grumbling, especially about the census. Dorcas said for Jews to be counted was to be seen as beasts, not human beings. To them, another insult from the Romans. How easily they forget. The Jews themselves appealed to Pompey to settle their civil war. Yes, Romans are conquerors of Judah, but conquerors by invitation. Of course, as soon as Pompey's soldiers came in, the Jews changed their mind. My husband, only a boy then, and he said they fought weeks before Jerusalem fell. Believe me, Jews are hard to rule. Why, the mere sight of Roman guards carrying their standards can touch off a riot. Dorcas said it was because the emblems on top of the poles were graven images. Have you ever heard of anything so ridiculous? We can't do anything to please them. Why, the very roads we travel on were built by Romans. And Roman aqueducts from Caesarea bringing them water from the Carmel Mountains. We do everything we can to keep them happy. We don't make them worship Caesar Augustus. Jews are allowed to worship their own God. Why, they're even allowed to keep their high priest. I pointed that out to Dorcas. But she pointed out to me that Romans keep their ceremonial garments locked up and dole them out to the priests only on religious holidays. There's nothing that we can do to please them. It's the crucifying that terrifies them. It's a terrible way to die. By law, no Roman can be crucified. But Romans don't mind crucifying Jews. One day, I saw a soldier whipping a Jewish zealot through the market. I must admit, it made me a little sick. And when they crucified them and raised the cross, oh, such screaming. I ran home, fleeing from the blood and the sound of the vileness. To this day, I dream of it. But after all, that's the only way to keep the peace. While we're famous for the altars built in Rome to honor peace, our kind of peace is known all over the empire. The Pax Romana, so named by our savior of the world, Caesar Augustus. By our second night, on the road, I was weary. I wondered how that poor child could bear riding that donkey. Dorcas said it was Mary and Joseph's 4th day of travel. While the sun was out and the east wind lashed grit in our faces and made us cringe in our clothes, but at night, by the door of each tent, each family built a fire. I was sitting under ours while Dorcas cooked my supper. The moon had risen and was running before the clouds. We were camped in a grove of almond trees, and the night coolness had stirred the fragrance of the blossoms. That night, the world was too beautiful, too peaceful to dream of whips and crucifixion. The girl and her husband sat down by the fire. She leaned her head against his shoulder, and the man put his arm around her. How I envied him. My husband takes little more than one. Obviously, the man loves his Mary, and Mary loves her Joseph. How can such love overcome hatred? It will take more than a human heart to heal all the stabs in a human heart. I'm prating like Dorcas. On the 3rd day out of Jezreel, we crossed the Jordan River, rode through the valley, and climbed again into Jerusalem. Excitement. There was so much excitement among the Jews. Nothing would do, of course, but they must go into the temple. I was inside once. To the court of the Gentiles. Once was enough. The snub-nosed sheep pulled back, and the lambs meek, stiff-legged, the white doves fluttering in their cages, and the hot blood spruing and the feathers sticky through them. The scraping and the hacking and the carving of raw red meat. Ugh. What kind of God demands a blood sacrifice? No thanks. I'll take our Roman God, Caesar Augustus, first emperor of Rome. He demands that we fight to get what he wants, and we fight to keep it. My husband said that as a nation or as an individual, you get what you fight for in this world. If you don't fight, people walk all over you. Any fool knows that. If you want to get ahead, you better start pushing. I know he's right. You do have to step on a few toes, and some people are going to get hurt. Look at them. They let everyone crowd in front of them. They haven't gone through the gate yet. It's a hard world.
Where? Her husband caught her. Yes, he did. They're both so tired they can hardly know what they're doing. I did the best I could. I sold them some salted fish, some fresh bread. The man can find the caves of the shepherd this time of year. The men are out with the flocks. The shepherd women will take them in. You can count on that. Not anyone in their right mind will stay with shepherds and their stinking animals. What else could I do? All week long, people pouring in here with their camels and their donkeys and their chicken. Every group with a story about why I should take them in. Just look around. Just look around. Just look around. My inn. People packed everywhere. In the hallways, in the courtyard, even on the roof. This inn has always been owned by my father's family. He had no sons, and now it's mine. It's bulging with Roman soldiers kicking whatever or whoever gets in their way. Of course, the man Joseph, he said his name was a carpenter from Nazareth. He saw it was no place for his wife. She needs women around her, not soldiers. You hardly ever see soldiers in Bethlehem. Why should you? a village like this, but they are uneasy about the crowds. So there they sit at the census table, their helmets flashing, taking reports of each family's size and worth. And you know what? They don't believe what they hear. That man on the black and white stallion knocks you down. Everyone in the line is a Jew. Here we are, God's chosen people. And here our land, both run by heathens. Stop. Oh, they're clever, these Romans. The first thing they did was to divide Palestine into 5 provinces. Farthest to the north is Galilee country. Folks have lived there, like those 2 riding off. Then Samaria. The less said about them, the better. Then Judea, that's here around Jerusalem, the center of everything. East of here is Persia, then the south, and on and on. The priests represent us before God in the temple at Jerusalem. Every day each priest draws his duties by lot. Sometimes he performs the circumcision, sometimes he collects the taxes. Things like that. Important jobs, but not the most important. Once in a lifetime, it falls to a priest to burn incense in the Holy of Holies, where the Ark of the Covenant once rested. But it's gone now. It's gone, destroyed, along with the temple built by Solomon. The temple been rebuilt twice, this last time by Herod. People said that Herod's dying. He's dying. Call the priest to the palace all the time. You see him going over there. It's peculiar. The priest tells us how wicked Herod is. Did y'all know that? He's wicked. But how they love to go to the palace. Their food is served on delicate dishes, and then, first thing you know, they must buy some for themselves. They get a taste for fancy food at Herod's table. The first thing you know, the priests are eating meat almost every night and drinking heated wine between courses like Herod himself. It is to pay for their fine china, their meat, their wine, and that my husband shoveled the filth of animals, and I scrubbed and sweep and cooked. My, how well the service of the Lord served himself with our tithes and offerings. The priests preach about Daniel's writing and about a cosmic struggle, whatever that is. Sometimes they say Elijah will return to herald a time of peace. How is Elijah supposed to be born again? That's the trouble with these preachers. No one knows what they're talking about. I'm not sure any Jew knows what he's talking about. Jews have been conquered by Assyria, Babylonian, Persia, Greece, Egypt, and Syria. And now Rome. It's enough for that carpenter to know he must not get his wife shelter enough for him to keep her safe. Quite enough for him to provide a living for the woman and her child. What would it be like for him to know he was responsible for the Messiah of Israel, for the Savior of the whole world? I don't know what got into me tonight. The carpenter's wife is only an ordinary woman who will bear an ordinary child. Not the Messiah. No. His parents, the parents of the Messiah, will be people of substance. Their child will be someone who will put Bethlehem on the map. You're going to put him on the map. Just wait and see. Well, I better be getting back to work. I take care of my end because my end takes care of me. I guess I like the Messiah to come, but in the meantime, what a person owns is the most important thing in life. That I know. It's dark. I wonder if Joseph found a place for his wife. It won't be long before she has a baby. No, not long. See you later.
If they know what's good for them, they'll get on their camels and get out of Jerusalem before Herod changes his mind and kills them right now. Of course, he is going to kill them. But first he wants proof that there really is a new king of the Jews. He'll let them find the boy king if there is one. If not, then they're the fools, not Herod. Herod told the Persian kings to report back to the palace. He says, there is a king. If there is a king, he too will want to worship him. When Herod finds out where the child is, he'll murder the kings and kill the boy. He half believed there is such a child when the kings told him about the star they had followed. Herod turned pale. A few nights ago, his own astronomers pointed out a new star to him, the brightest one they had ever seen. So while Herod entertained the kings of Persia with wild boar and lobster, Herod's priests searched the Jewish scriptures. And when they reported that a king from the line of David was to be born in Bethlehem, my dear husband, Herod the Great, almost fainted. I don't know why he believes anything in the Jewish scriptures. He's not a Jew. Why he sent his own sons to school in Rome, Herod and Ivan, whose forefathers were forced into Judaism a century ago. But he calls himself a Jew when it suits him. No matter what Herod calls himself, the Jews will, Herod calls himself, the Jews call him circumcised Arab. But as a child, Herod studied the Jewish religion, an embarrassment to him now, especially with Romans. Still, he never really rooted Jewishness out of his soul, and it festered there as kind of reproach to his life. The Jews were fond of reciting Herod's atrocities. He tortures, he kills. No one knows that better than but he's kept the peace between the Pharisees and the high priest. As much as anyone can, some years ago, the Pharisees were feuding with a high priest who aligned himself with the Sadducees. His name was Janneus. He was a monster like Herod. He killed over 56,000 Jews. Once he crucified 800 Jews at one time. While they hung dying, he slaughtered their families in front of them. After Genesis died, his sons tore the country apart. Herod helped to end that civil war. And he made sure Rome knew it. That should have been the end of the matter. But about a year later, Julius Caesar was murdered. And while the Romans were preoccupied with that problem, Antigonus, son of the last Maccabean king, tried to restore the dynasty in Palestine. Civil war broke out. Herod went running to Rome and persuaded the Romans to crown him king of the Jews. They did that and killed Antigonus as well. After 3 years of shedding Jewish blood, Herod gained control not only of Judea, but almost all the Palestine. Herod can't possibly live until a boy king grows up, but he won't let that stop him. Why? He'll have a spy on the king's heels the moment they leave Jerusalem. He's already alerting the palace guards. If the kings don't come back to the palace, the soldiers will slaughter all the male infants in Bethlehem. You think Herod won't do that? Why? After he was crowned, he killed off all the claimants to the Maccabee kingship, including his own brother-in-law and the high priest. He took me, a Maccabean woman, for one of his wives, as a kind of political insurance. Soon after that, he killed his favorite wife, Marilyn, and her mother, because he thought they were plotting to take his throne. Just as last year I saw him drown 3 of his sons, all because of rumors. Rumors, that's all. Oh yes, such a man could easily massacre the children of Bethlehem. No wonder the Jews fear Herod, but the Romans aren't afraid of him. They jerk Herod about like a puppet on a string. To please them, Herod builds Roman cities and markets, gymnasiums, pagan temples, theaters, public baths, and games. The Romans love games. And Herod, before he sickened, was a great athlete. In Caesarea, Herod organized competitions like the Olympics, holds them every 10 years, just like the Greeks. Herod balances between the Jews and the Romans. When he rebuilt the Jewish temple, right next to it, he restored the Antonia, a huge fortress that he broke through the stone walls of both buildings, cutting a door so the Roman soldiers could clatter down a staircase into the temple itself. Yes, Herod has mastered the art of walking a tightrope. He knows the Romans wouldn't tolerate him if he didn't control the Jews. For that matter, the Romans wouldn't put up with the Jews. The Jews didn't control all the commerce. Palestine straddles a military highway that links Africa, Asia, and Europe, a road along which money flows into Roman pockets. Oh yes, Rome needs Herod and Jews and Palestine. And the Jews need Roman protection, but they would like to forget how much. That's why they shut their eyes to the string of garrisons and fortresses built along the eastern and northern borders. But the Jews pay that protection, and they know it. Actually, they pay double taxes to the temple priests and to the Romans. But a lot of the Jews trick the tax collectors. So every once in a while, the Romans call for a census. They'll hunt down and kill anyone who fails to register. This time, they force someone in each Jewish family to go to the place of their forefathers. The parents of the child the king seek in Bethlehem and have come from, and he could make trouble anywhere in the country. Yes, Herod will kill and kill again. I know Yahweh, God of the Jews, God of the Maccabeans. He's a God who can use a Roman census to bring the mother of his chosen one to Bethlehem. A God who long ago created a star so that today it leads the Gentile kings to the child. A God who spoke through the heart of the prophet Micaiah centuries ago. And when his scripture was read again this day, God's voice was heard once more. If this child, the Persian wise men seek to, is God sent to be the king of the Jews, then nothing Herod can do that would stop God's plan from unfolding. Yet, Herod will kill the children. I must shove that picture away from me. Every once in a while, my terror comes close and I go phantoms down into darkness, down into a loneliness, down into this desperate need. Sometimes in the darkness, I hear God's voice calling me. One of those sons. Remember when I told you I saw him drown 3 young babies. One of those sons drowned by my husband was mine. I held him in my arms. My tears dropped on his putty-colored face. like the faces of those children who will die. I dare not remember my son. I cannot afford to think of the little boys of Bethlehem, nor their mothers. I know how dreadful is the surface of this world, but I know even more than horror of my despair, I believe in God who speaks across the years and who now is speaking another word in a helpless child who becomes eternal truth. And yet, I will not listen to the God who lets Herod live to murder and murder and murder again. Why? Why? I will hide my face in the putty of my temple of my hands, and I will shut out the voice of the word that would speak to me. I too walk a tightrope between sanity and madness. If I am to survive in this house of Herod, I cannot answer the voice of God.